Welcome to This Week in the Warner Archive Collection, where we discuss our newest releases. I'm George Feltenstein, and I'm proud to be joined by my colleagues, Matt Patterson and D.W. Ferranti.
Hi, and welcome to a very special edition of the Warner Archive Collection podcast, in which we have two very special guests here to talk about one of our favorite releases of all time, Young Justice. Here they are, fresh from Season 3, Young Justice Outsiders, Brandon Vietti and Greg Weisman, and by my side is fellow podcaster Matthew Patterson.
Because I'm here, Dan, it's a very, very special episode. And now with our two guests, I guess it would be a very, 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 very special episode.
I think we've hit the threshold. Greg, Brandon, just from our own small fan perspective, having just binged Season 3, good job.
Thank you.
Thanks.
It's been a while since Season 2. For us, it's only been,
It's been longer for these guys.
Oh, yeah, but no, so from our perspective, we released the Blu-rays in 2014?
I think it was 2016.
2016. Jeez, yeah.
No, maybe it was 2015. This is great. We should have looked this up. Anyway, the last time you guys were here, I recall asking you guys if you wanted to share any ideas you had for Young Justice's future. And you both very strongly said, absolutely not. We still have plans and hopes. And they came true.
I know, isn't that bizarre that they came true?
I'm looking at my notes, Dan. It was 2014 when we released...
Oh, it was 2016 when they announced that you guys were back in business.
2016, we were hanging out with them at WonderCon when we did the panel Young Justice versus Justice League.
I remember
and
that.
And what I appreciated from Greg is that you got very upset that it really, like, we were not debating the issues of the superhero teams, but it became like everybody cheering the voice actors, which I felt was correct. Because we had planned a lot of serious debates about how to raise a young superhero, like, and how the different teams handled it, and what is justice. But, you know, the fans just wanted to clap, and I, for one, was very sad.
It's hard to contain the room when Kevin Conroy is there.
Oh, is that what it was? But anyway, when we were talking about that stuff before, just those like two things that I mentioned, were these the sorts of issues that were percolating in your head and it could all come out for Season 3? I mean, because everything has changed once again.
We always do a time skip between seasons so that we can further see how our characters have grown, so that we can surprise our audience here and there, twist their expectations, make them miserable before we make them happy.
Yes.
Otherwise, yeah, I mean, you know, we had a game plan back in Season 1 for what Season 3 would be like, and we basically stuck to it, which doesn't mean we didn't discover things along the way and make some changes. I don't want to pretend that we had broken Season 3 back in Season 1, but just that we had the basic general idea for multiple seasons, including Season 4, which is what Brandon and I are working on right now.
What? Whoa. See, I didn't know. Everything felt so wrapped up.
Yeah, no, we don't do that. We don't we don't wrap things up with a bow.
It's also important to remember looking back at when we were releasing Invasion on Blu-ray, and then it was the beginning of the continued percolation of the fan on social media. And one of the things they kept on talking about, and we actually addressed it because we had seen the questions, was, you know, they accused Season 2 of ending on a cliffhanger.
It was not a cliffhanger.
And that was a foreshadow, not a cliffhanger.
Right.
Yeah, we don't like to tie things. It's just not how life is, and I feel like we've always tried to be true to life with the show and our depictions of the characters, the stories that we tell, the types of issues that we try to bring up for our characters throughout the series. We're always trying to echo real life and hope that that resonates with our audience. I think it has. I think it is one of the draws of the show, but that's also a big part of life, is like nothing just ends in a nice, neat little package. Evil is never fully defeated. And it feels sometimes when I hear those things from fans, I feel like, wait, you want all evil to be defeated forever and just the heroes win and that's it? It's like, it's
Yeah,
just
of course.
The
Yeah.
end of drama.
Yeah.
right.
It just will live in a cloud.
Yeah.
But
A good
sort
cloud.
of riffing off of that, one of the other benefits that you guys, in my opinion, got with this new season was a little more artistic freedom, which it's still Young Justice. It's not like some other shows with swearing and bloodshed. But you explored some very mature issues that young people and older people, like, you know, gender identity, bisexuality. It's all there. It's not the main focus, but your characters are allowed to be a little deeper than probably the network was comfortable with.
You can definitely see some contrast between the 2 seasons on Cartoon Network and the season on DC Universe. We definitely had more freedom, but we felt it was freedom to do things that honestly we should have been able to do before.
Right.
And some of the stuff we did was more mature, but we view it a little bit like our audience is growing up with us. So almost in a Harry Potter kind of sense, you wouldn't let the kind of young kids who can read Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, you wouldn't start them off on Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, I mean?
Right.
But by the time they read through those 7 books, by the time they get to that last book, they're ready for it. They're older and they're ready for it. And so, we always still recommend even a new viewer start with season 1,
Absolutely.
and get more out of it that way. And the kids who start with season 1 can be pretty young. And then as they grow with the show, we think it's a pretty organic aging up of the show, even between season 2 and 3, despite the network changeover.
That's actually how it struck me. And then at the end of season 3, for the first time, I felt some of the characters were more mature than me. And when they started in 2011, I was like, I'm an adult. Now I'm like, oh,
Speaking
I got to get a house and stuff.
Unexpected maturity. I think one of the outstanding things among many things in this season was Beast Boy's coming into his own. And, we're very used to seeing Greg do a wonderful comedic superhero thing that he does, but you pushed that character into very serious drama, and it totally worked.
Yeah, Greg Sipes does. It was very interesting, getting to know Greg Sipes' performance as Beast Boy through Teen Titans, and yeah, to bring him on board and see where he helped us take the character. It was fascinating to watch an actor perform and grow and evolve and help us tell our story.
The other thing that was interesting about that is that, at the beginning of the season, Brandon and I sat down and said, okay, who are the focus characters this season? Who are we going to sort of not write out of the show, but sort of figure out that they're doing other things? And one of the characters that we thought is not going to be a big element of this season was Beast Boy. We were like, Garfield's off making Space Trek 3016. Right. He'll appear a couple times, and we actually had one episode planned that we wanted to do, which wound up being Nightmare Monkeys. But we didn't think he was going to be a major player this season, and Garfield just came knocking at the door and said, I'm not done.
Yeah.
I got things I need to say and things I need to do. And that really literally caught us off guard. And it's only Brandon and I in the room breaking these stories, and yet it surprised us. It's like, no, wait, Garfield's got to do this, and now he's got to do this. And he became this important, and this is even before Greg Sipes, joined the cast. I'm talking when we were breaking stories. Beast Boy became this really important player in the season, and we had not planned that initially.
Yeah, I mean, we had this inkling of an idea of telling a story that involved social media and reaching out to a younger generation. So we had those elements, I think, in the mix. And the more we talked it out, the more we realized, the best character kind of to help us bring these stories into the forefront would be Beast Boy.
Coincidentally for us, a week after this release comes out on Blu-ray, we're releasing the complete Teen Titans series on Blu-ray. So before watching your thing, the last thing I watched was the last regular episode, which is probably one of my favorite Beast Boy episodes in anything, where he has to confront his ex-love and why she's ignoring him. So for my personal watching it in order journey, this was a wonderful surprise to me, because it almost felt, and this, when was that? That was like 2006 or something? Like it almost felt that almost this natural progression of the character in sort of a meta DC universe way.
Well, especially since not to diverge into the Beast Boy podcast.
Sorry,
but the interesting thing with Greg Sipes has so made the character his own. He is Beast Boy on Teen Titans, Teen Titans Go, Superhero Girls, and Young Justice, and they're all different, but it's all sort of coming from the same sort of platonic uber character.
Yeah, he's the Beast Boy in the cave. It's like a little shadow. So for people like us, what's fun with these shows and the ability to collect and view all these shows, however you want. It's almost like, you can create this like meta story in your head. I'm just pushing home video really right now. This is our own little thing.
Now, to zero in on this season a little bit, which of the two of you, and I'm sure the answer is both of you, is the Jack Kirby fan?
Both of us.
yeah, I think
definitely
both of us,
Yeah.
I love what you guys did with the Fourth World stuff. I mean, I'm a
cool.
huge Jack Kirby fan. And at first, when I was trying to get what information I could about the show, and I saw the characters designs for Forager, I was very fan frowny. But I love what happened in the show. It was great. I mean, I still love Jack's beautiful, ugly character that he then later brought to Marvel and Eternals. But you guys did a different take, but it totally worked. And also, I love the fact that the bad guy is Granny Goodness. I mean, Darkseid is, of course, Darkseid.
Spoiler alert,
but-
Dan.
Ooh, well, it's early on we realize it's Granny.
A lot of the people who listen to the Warner Archive podcast are not uber DC fans. So I feel the need to step in on their behalf and just say, this show is great and it has all the wonderful plotting and arcs. It's not, if you're not into animated DC shows, this is one that you can really sink your teeth into if you're unfamiliar.
I mean, one of the things that we have going for us along those lines with the show is that we're Earth 16. So it's a version of the DC universe. It's an alternate dimension. It's a parallel universe. And so some things are going to be very much like they are in the comics, and some things are going to have that YJ twist to them. And in terms of Forager specifically, Jack kept calling him a bug. So we said, let's make him a bug. And let's give him some traits that feel unique and frankly alien, and yet at the same time that they're alien, even down to him not using pronouns, they only make him feel more human. And he, in many ways, is the most human character in season 3.
Yeah. We were really excited to bring in a different type of character, too. I feel like, there was a progression in the evolution of some of the design work and the character choices that are Phil Barassa, our art director, and lead character designer through the first 3 seasons, were able to kind of put our heads together and track an evolution. And I think you can see that through all 3 seasons, from more grounded, realistic, I think, designs in the first season. Into the second season, we started to introduce aliens and more fantastic characters. And then into the third season, we're able to even push that further with characters like Forager, sort of rethinking Jack Kirby's original vision, pushing him into a more bug-like shape. We hadn't really seen a sort of creature-y type of character like that before, especially on a hero team, and that's something we wanted to put more varied faces, I think, on our heroes and villains in terms of their design, so they weren't strictly human or humanoid. And that's something great about, going back to the Jack Kirby's Fourth World, as you mentioned, like that. Jack Kirby's Fourth World in the comics is just this bonanza of crazy ideas, right? And so to be able to tap that again and give that third season a different flavor that the previous seasons didn't have, really dive into some of those crazy Jack Kirby ideas, was really thrilling for us from both a story standpoint to sort of give the season its own thing, but also from a design standpoint to really make things look different.
And we've talked a lot about Greg's great work on Beast Boy, but in terms, particularly when you talk about how human and humanizing Forager is, got to give so much credit to Jason Spizak, who just found 2 voices for the character, one for Forager and one for Fred Bug, that are similar and yet different, and just imbue that character with such warmth. And despite the fact that he's a bug with an exoskeleton, and we love Jason, and with Kid Flash gone, we just really wanted to still have Jason on the show, and Jason just stepped up and did this amazing work on Forge.
It's very creative. I mean, he was always coming to the sessions with different ideas on how to form and shape the character. As the character evolved, he has a second persona that he evolves to in the show, and kind of coming up with a unique feel for that character. Was an interesting evolution that we watched him make, and there's a lot of this stuff was his ideas. He really took to Forager.
It's a large cast of characters.
You think so?
Yeah, but this character wonderfully stands as the outsider of the outsiders. Also becomes, as for the audience, the most relatable entry point, to empathize with him because his sense of wonder at that world, it's very easy for me to see it through his eyes. And of course, I love RVs as well. I'm specifically that RV.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because this season is both super cosmic and super grounded. And that's sort of Forager in a nutshell.
And
Yeah.
Dan and I, of course, the first thing that we talk about when we start, talking about the series was the Dutch still lifes
The
at
outros.
the end. Because we're like, so do you watch those outros all the way through?
Oh yeah, I love the music that those guys came up with for that, and I love just it gives the episode this very funny little counterpoint right at the end, and it can be super poignant or super funny.
Or just sleeping dogs, which I love because in the evolution of the timeline of the show,
You're like, that dog is an old dog.
the
now.
dog is
It's
getting
gonna
old.
sleep.
It's a big dog. Like I instantly relate to that in showing the scope. If the whole scope of your show can be summarized in 1 minute of a sleeping dog, I say congratulations. And that's what I'm walking away with. I don't know what that says about me. I like dogs, I guess.
I think our decision relatively early on was that how can we stuff as much entertainment value as we can possibly manage on our budget
Right.
to the thing. So, you animate the dog breathing in one cycle,
Yeah.
and then you can repeat it over and over again. We get this great music from Michael McQuistion and Lola DeRitmanis and Chris Carter.
Yeah.
That's a lullaby. If someone had said to me, hey, could you do a lullaby version of the Young Justice
Right.
theme? I'd be like, no. But guess we could. So,
Yeah. And it was-
you get that and you get a little bit more story. It might just be a little bit, but you get a little bit more story out of
I'm watching the whole credit sequence, just waiting, and then I came to accept, yes, that
But
is
the real
life.
genesis for that obviously was Lobo. And then we had to
Right,
back.
and backtrack.
Yeah.
We had to backtrack to
Yeah.
sort of
Right. Yeah. Those are some discussions I think with DC Universe. Actually, they were very excited to see what more can we do? How can we work together to really create some extra fun material for the show? And I don't remember how all those discussions went, but I remember that that's kind of how these post-credit things were kind of bubbling up, and the idea of stretching the Lobo fingers
Yeah.
throughout several episodes, and then, well, gosh, what do we do in between? And yeah, it was sort of a fun evolution, as many ideas are when you're creating a series.
My personal pet favorite thing in the show, which I picked up on when we released your season 1 and season 2, is of course the very helpful timestamps, which is telling me where we are and exactly when. And Dan has sort of noticed that I've gone a little off the deep end on my love of time zones more recently, and I congratulate you guys for using a universal coordinated time correctly, because it works in space, but my personal feeling is that the world should just convert to UTC, and then we can all have our own time zones.
there's nothing that's a bigger pain in my butt on the series than the timestamps.
The beauty is he came
was
up
all
with the
my
idea.
idea.
Yeah.
There's no one to blame except myself, but it is the hardest part. I'm not exaggerating. It is the hardest part of the whole
so-
thing.
How do you do time dilation through different gravity when you go through, a boom tube?
Don't even.
Do you have a formula? You have a
Don't even
secret
go there.
formula?
No, I mean it's hard enough just to keep straight weight. If it's morning and it's like you have this revelation that you see in the show, which is like, oh, these kids are going to Happy Harbor High, and they're living on the West Coast. So we lampshade it. We just sort of say we have Halo of all people say, yeah, getting up on the West Coast to go to school on the East Coast does suck. And of course, Zara Fuzzle, who plays Halo, read that line so great. And but again, it's oh my God, we're trying to be real.
Yeah.
And it's being real is a pain sometimes. But yeah, I do think even now, I do think it's worthwhile.
It works.
Yeah,
It worked, and I love
it
that
helps
it-
ground the show a lot in ways that I think would be missing if we didn't do it. And
Mm-hmm.
it really helps given the fact that we do time skips and we do want these characters to age in more or less real time. And one of the things that you get is we've seen Dick Grayson at age 13 and then we've seen him at age 21 and a couple things in between, and that kind of growth in a character you rarely get to see even in comics, because in comics we're all sort of, the time just sort of keeps
They have a very action-packed year.
right resetting
and over.
because you need these characters to sort of be their trademark
Selves.
versions, unless you're doing an Elseworld story or something like that.
Right.
But we have this sort of grand luxury in being this one Earth 16 thing where we can sort of play the time passing. We have pasts to this character that took place, to these characters, plural, that took place before season 1 began. There's stuff that goes beyond and in between episodes and in between seasons. And we have this timeline that's something like 400 pages long at this point.
When is that getting published?
Pretty much never. I'm guessing never. Does that work for you?
Yeah, I like the mystery.
Oh, now it's the ultimate collectible.
But it really helps. One of the major themes of our series is young characters growing up. And you couldn't do that without time passing. And these timestamps really help get a sense of the passage of time, I think, in a concrete way.
And also, I mean, purely coincidentally, with the amount of time that you guys were on hiatus.
That was the plan.
Exactly. Because the timestamps actually kind of sync up to now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you have this, because now third season, right? It's like part of it is that you can always introduce the new characters. And in this season, we've talked about a few of those characters so far, but it's very interesting that sort of in reflecting almost a larger, in our world, political, I'll call it an allegory.
Is this getting into Secretary General Luther?
Well, I'm starting with Markovia,
Okay.
just saying how there's some heroes from the third world that have, and then of course you have Ultimate, like fish out of water, and also, which is very real as well. I guess fish in water in this season. With that, okay,
Is that
sorry.
an Aqualad reference?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean,
I thought we were going with refugees.
well,
but-
refugees as well. I sidetracked myself. There's so much plot I can't keep track in my own head. In the format now, we've got new heroes, new world, new world situation. The world has moved on, and in this world, of course, Dan and I have become very concerned about the rise of the United Nations.
Yeah, I think that must have been because that was Earth's reaction to the Reach, was to give all the power to the UN, because Lex Luthor's definitely the most powerful Secretary General the UN's ever had.
I mean, besides Boutros Ghali. I mean, if I can't make a Boutros Ghali reference, I don't know what I'm wearing.
But speaking of Halo, yeah, I mean, like Forager, and because you guys were doing Outsiders, I love the way you paid homage to Mike Barr's stuff and still, made it Earth 16, and the characters were both those characters and these brand new characters.
I mean, that was kind of the goal. I think particularly when we were beginning making the show, the Syrian refugee crisis was huge in the news. To be honest, it should still be huge in the news, but it's not. These refugees coming into Europe and other places, and what they had to face, and we wanted to speak to that to some degree, but we also wanted to, as you said, pay homage to what Mike and Jim did on The Outsiders way back when. We love that stuff. We hope we were respectful to the core idea of all those characters. Certainly tried to be. We won't deny we made changes, and some of the changes are more obvious than others, of course. But I think we tried to still lock into what was core and essential about each of these characters. It's for others to decide whether we succeeded or failed.
I mean, as we do with every character in the series, we always start with the source material and try to build from there. And, sometimes we might wander a little further from the source material on, from character to character. But that's always the goal, is to make sure that the fans out there will always still be able to identify, even if the character looks different or does something different than they're used to from the stories. Like the core of the character's still there. That's really important. And, I mean, it's also kind of a cool thing, I think, about the DC universe and how DC has shaped all of these characters to begin with, is that they give us a lot to work with in the beginning when we set out to, tell some stories.
Who knew 80 years of content was...
Well, You know, you guys, I looked, your Rotten Tomato score is 94%. So, you know, let's, season
it
4,
felt
let's
low?
get that 6% more. Guys, those are the people who you need to win over. Well, this is an incredible season and a wonderful release. And Dan, I would say it looks pretty astounding on Blu-ray.
Yeah, I mean, if you've watched it on DC Universe, and you should have, it looks really good. But thanks to the greater wavelength of Blu-ray,
Bandwidth.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I guess you were doing a blue ultraviolet.
Yeah,
I
okay,
get it.
yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Anyway, it looks super on Blu-ray. And the other thing you get on Blu-ray is it's going to sound even better. So if you love this show, watch it on the Blu-ray and binge watch it.
And in our next podcast episode, we're going to be here with the guys doing a commentary track. So if you have your Blu-ray or your DVD or your stream, we'll let you know which episode it's going to be so you can load it up and then watch along. It's going to be like a party, right?
Yes, and this is our way of making up for not having a commentary on the disc because of production schedule changes. So it will live on the web.
I'm Matt Patterson.
DW Ferranti.
And our guests.
Brandon Vietti.
And Greg Weissman.
Thank you guys very much, and thank you for listening.